Welcome to Beyond Sunday with Pastor Nick Williams. South Shore Community Church exists to help all people find and follow Jesus. Join us weekly as we talk through current sermons, theology, parenting issues, and how to have a gospel-centered marriage. We are praying that today's message helps you grow closer to Jesus. Now, here's your host, Pastor Nick.
Hey, podcast world, welcome back to the podcast. If you're listening today, the day I recorded, January 20th, it is my wedding anniversary. So let me give a shout out to my wife. We've been married 19 years today. What a crazy ride it's been. She will never hear this shout out. She has to listen to me enough, so she will not listen to today's podcast, but excited and blessed that all God has done through our marriage. Now, last time we talked about how spiritual warfare is often subtle. How the enemy works through distraction and isolation and shame to slowly erode our spiritual health without us even realizing what's happening. Today, I want to take that conversation a step deeper, because while spiritual warfare can show up in relationships, circumstances, and seasons of life, it often begins somewhere much closer to home. It begins in the mind. See, the enemy's favorite battleground is the space between your ears. If the enemy can influence what you believe, distort what you assume, or quietly shape the narrative you rehearse in your thoughts, he can affect your direction long before he ever touches your behavior. And before we go any further, let me say this clearly. Struggling mentally or emotionally does not mean your faith is weak. It does not mean you're failing spiritually, and it does not mean you're losing the battle. What does it mean? It means you're human. See, the Christian life was never about having perfect thoughts. It's about learning discernment, learning which thoughts deserve agreement and which ones need to be confronted. One of the most important steps in spiritual warfare is understanding where the battle actually takes place. Paul reminds us this in 2 Corinthians 10, verses 3 through 5, when he says, "For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God." And then he says this, "And we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ." Paul reminds us that although we live in the world, the war we're fighting isn't waged the way the world fights. The battle is not merely external, it's internal, it's ideological, it's mental. That means not every thought you have is sinful, but it also means not every thought you have is true. And that distinction matters. Some thoughts are simply human: fatigue, stress, emotion, memory. Other thoughts are temptations, subtle distortions of truth. And some thoughts are lies that need to be challenged. See, a thought doesn't have to be loud to be dangerous. It just has to be believed. Spiritual maturity isn't measured by whether thoughts show up. It's measured by whether those thoughts are examined. Now, let's talk about 3 lies the enemy uses consistently and quietly against believers. These lies don't usually arrive as statements. They arrive as assumptions. They sound reasonable. They sound and feel familiar, and they gain strength when they go unchallenged. Lies gain power when they go unchallenged in your life. Lie number 1, you're alone in this. This is one of the most common and destructive lies the enemy whispers. It whispers that no one would understand, that no one else struggles like you do, that if people really knew what you were dealing with, they'd pull away. This lie, it isolates you. It convinces you to suffer silently instead of reaching out, to manage instead of confess, to withdraw instead of connect. But isolation is never God's design. Scripture consistently reminds us that God is present, that community is a gift, not a burden. See, the enemy wants you convinced that you're fighting alone because isolation makes every struggle heavier. Lie number 2, this is just who you are. This lie confuses identity with struggle. It takes a pattern, a temptation, or even a season and turns it into a label. that I'm just an anxious person, that I've always struggled with this, that's just how I'm wired. But Scripture, it draws a clear line between who you are and what you struggle with. See, your thoughts are not your identity. Let me say that again. Your thoughts are not your identity. Your struggles are not your name. Your temptations are not your destiny. See, the enemy wants you to believe that change isn't possible because identity feels permanent. But struggle is not the same as surrender. Lie number 3, nothing will ever change. This lie, it attacks hope in your life. It takes past experience and projects them into the future. Hey, you've prayed about this before. You've tried to change. Nothing worked. Why would it now? See, hopelessness is one of the enemy's most effective tools. Because when hope fades, effort fades. When effort fades, isolation grows. And when isolation grows in your life, the battle feels unwinnable. But Scripture consistently ties endurance to hope, not outcomes. Change may be slow, progress may be uneven, but stagnation is not inevitable. Let me share something personal, not to overshare, but to normalize the struggle. There have been seasons in my life where discouragement or anxiety didn't line up with what was happening around me. See, nothing dramatic was wrong. Life was stable. Ministry was moving forward. On the outside, everybody would think, man, he's got it together. Things are going good in Nick's life. But internally, something felt heavy. Thoughts would repeat themselves. Questions would linger longer than they should. Motivation would dip without a clear reason. And that's when I had to learn this lesson the hard way. Just because a thought feels true doesn't mean it's true. Why don't you say that with me? Just because a thought feels true doesn't mean it's true. See, I wasn't failing spiritually. I wasn't even backsliding. I was under internal pressure, and I needed to respond with discernment, not shame. Now, let's get practical, because awareness without tools leads to frustration. Here are 3 biblical anchors that help reclaim mental ground. Tool number 1, Paul talks about taking thoughts captive. That implies intention. So you don't ignore the thoughts. You don't immediately agree with them either. You examine them. You ask questions like, is this thought true? Does this thought align with Scripture? Where is this thought leading me? So you can't stop every thought from entering your mind, but you can stop it from taking residence. Tool number 2, Scripture is not meant to be a quick fix. It's meant to be an anchor. Not a slogan you repeat, but truth you return to. Scripture grounds you when emotions fluctuate. It reminds you who God is when circumstances feel unclear. It anchors your thoughts into something stable when everything else feels shaky. And Paul, he gives us a powerful framework in Philippians. He says this, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable. I mean, look at that list. He says, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. See, prayer isn't about saying the right words. It's about realignment. It's bringing your thoughts into God's presence and allowing truth to reshape perspective. See, prayer doesn't always change circumstances immediately, but it consistently changes orientation. It turns anxiety into surrender, confusion into clarity, and isolation into awareness of God's nearness. Now, if this episode hits close to home, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not alone. You're not abnormal. And you are definitely not disqualified. This is a shared struggle, not a private failure. That's why this chapter in the book and the upcoming group discussion matters so much. Because transformation doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in truth-filled community. Let me leave you with this takeaway. You can't control every thought, but you can choose which ones you agree with. Agreement is powerful. What you agree with shapes your direction. What you challenge loses influence. So stay alert, stay anchored, and remember, you're not fighting for victory, You're fighting from it. Until next time, armor up, fight the fight, and stand firm in your faith.
Thank you for tuning in to Beyond Sunday. We hope the conversations and insights shared here have brought you encouragement and have deepened your journey of faith. If today's episode has inspired you, we invite you to follow or subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an opportunity to grow closer to Jesus alongside us. Don't forget to share this podcast with friends and family who might be blessed by it too. Until next time, thanks for joining us, and may God bless you abundantly.